The first interview with Synchronicity back in business is done and dusted. I'm just getting to learn how things have changed in the world of Zoom and all of the things. So, our interview was cut a little bit short. So, if you have questions based on this interview, please post them below so that I can ask Ellen when she returns to the show at a future date. So post your comments below and enjoy the interview. All right. Hi, and welcome to Synchronicity for your mind, body, and soul. We are back after a long hiatus over the pandemic, and today's guest is Ellen Meredith. Ellen is the author of Your Body Will Show You the Way and the Language Your Body Speaks. She's been in private practice since 1984 as an energy healer, conscious channel, and medical intuitive, helping over 10,000 clients and students worldwide. As an energy medicine practitioner, Ellen helps clients engage with the body's energies to activate healing. She teaches energy medicine courses on the Shift Network and has served on the faculty of energy medicine pioneer Donna Eden since 2010. And you can find her at ellenmeredith.com, and I will link to that somewhere around here. Ellen, do you also have a YouTube channel?
I do. And I think my new handle is at Ellen Meredith. So easy
Beautiful.
to find.
Beautiful. And I will put a card somewhere around there so people can connect with your YouTube channel as well. So we're here today to talk about your brand new book, Your Body Will Show You the Way. And I was reading about your experience growing up where your family taught you to really intellectualize and really be up in your head. And I think that's an issue for most of us in Western culture these days. So could you start by a little bit telling us about your experience with that and kind of what led you to be creating these books and becoming an energy healer?
Sure, absolutely. Well, when I was growing up, I had a lot of little ailments. I would sprain my ankle fairly frequently, or I get these little sore throats or tummy aches, and they'd kind of come and go. But over time, I just didn't know how to work my body, and it's true. My family was everybody was in their heads, and so I felt like I didn't have a user's manual for how do you use this body? What is this? And so it accumulated, and I developed some chronic illnesses, including chronic migraines in my, I guess 30s and 40s in particular. And I kept saying, how do you work this thing? How do you work this thing? But at the same time, or maybe even a little earlier, I had an awakening. My inner teachers made contact with me, my inner guides. And before I tell the story much further, I want to say I believe all of us have inner teachers and inner guides. I don't believe I was all that special. It's just that because I'm a communicator, I have Gemini, everything in Mercury, everything's about communication for me. And I'm a writer. So I was always listening in for ideas and insights. And one day I had finished a book that I'd written, a novel, actually. I was still in my late teens, I believe. My grandmother, who was dead, showed up in my head and gave me a message. And I absolutely didn't have a context for that. It just seemed like this weird thing that happened, and I wrote it down. But through a series of coincidences, I ended up going for a little psychic reading, and the psychic looked at me and said, "Your maternal grandmother is standing right behind you, and she has a message for you." And she repeated the exact message I had written down. And because of that, it opened me up to the possibility that there were levels of knowing and communication that weren't just the everyday. And within a very short time, I started hearing my inner teachers and channeling for them. But I want to say that channeling is not what a lot of people think it is. A lot of people think of it as a download, right? You just get this dump of information and you have wisdom. It hasn't worked that way for me. They would give me new frameworks or perspectives, ways to understand my experience, ways to think about or perceive situations. So my whole life was a workshop for these lessons that I was getting. And I've been training with them for almost 50 years now. And so they've been really teaching me a lot, and some of it very indirectly. You know, why is my heart hurting so much? Well, go here and experiment with that. And over time, um, I got I'm trying to think the order of things. Well, one thing that happened was they came in one day and said, you're going to move to California. You're going to get very, very sick. And in the process of healing, you're going to learn how to be a healer.
Wow.
And yeah, I saw, wow, I'm going to move to California. That's the only thing I heard in that whole message. But in fact, I did end up moving to California and getting very sick. And the person I worked with worked with meridians and lots of Chinese medicine stuff. She was an applied kinesiologist. And so in the process of healing, I did learn that I could see what was going on in my body, and I could perceive energetically what was happening in her body and how they were different. I could look at the supplements and see which ones my body needed. And it was something I didn't know I could do, because how many of us ever have the chance to figure that out, right? It was situational. So when I healed, the practitioner asked me if I'd come work in her office as a medical intuitive. And that was almost 40 years ago. And my practice just took off. Within a year, I had to quit my day job, and well, I chose to quit my day job and go full time with this practice. And in the first years, it was very much taking guidance from my guides and the guides of my clients, and just letting the bodies that showed up, the people and the bodies who showed up, teach me as I went along. And then over time, I did get some training. I trained with Donna Eden about 15 or 18 years ago. I trained with her and added that material to my toolkit, because it's very similar to what my teachers taught me. So that, I don't know if that's too long an answer, but that's kind of my path to getting here today.
No, not at all. That's wonderful. And I can imagine there's other people who might be watching this interview or listening who want to become energy healers. And I know there are schools that teach energy healing, and I'm just wondering, because your teachers were these inner teachers, right?
Yeah.
And I know sometimes I've taken courses where I'm sort of like, they're just teaching me stuff so that they can charge me money for it, but I don't really feel like I'm actually getting the true
Right.
knowledge or
Right.
experience. So I'm just wondering what changed for you between doing this from your inner teachers and then getting that formal education.
Well, I'd had a practice for 23, 24 years, and I'd probably worked with close to 10,000 people at that point, doing not only healing work, but channeling work. And I went off to Europe and was doing some other work as well. And when I came back, I felt like I just needed to meet community, to find some other people doing the same kind of work. And so I went to a bookstore, and Donna Eden's book practically fell off the shelf on top of me. And I read it and said, okay, she's the real deal. I'm going to go study with her. So that's where I made the transition. But I want to address what you just brought up, because I think it's such an important point. In our culture, we're very outside in. We very much objectify everything. And we think if we want to know something, someone else has to teach us. Instead of our investigating and figuring things out for ourselves and working from the inside out, we very much, if I want to know something, I Google it and see what someone else has to say. It's just kind of where we all tend to go. But I want to encourage the listeners to at least enter into dialogue with your own being. Enter into what I call the language of energy, because your body, mind, and spirit are constantly communicating with each other and coordinating to create your life. And if we can't tune into that communication, and we can't tune into those conversations and participate, we're at the mercy of whatever they come up with. And I was for years and years. I mean, I had daily migraines for about 15 years, and I didn't know what to do about it, because I was just, even though I had guidance, I was asking the wrong questions. I didn't know how to really hear the guidance that was built into the body, because every fiber of your being is part of your inner guidance system. So that was that was my body forcing me to get real and get the curriculum, not in my head with messages and thoughts and ideas and frameworks, but really into a dynamic dialogue and eventually relationship with my own physical being. So that's what I encourage in my books. It's, they're focused on self-healing. They're focused on learning the language of energy, which is the language your body speaks, and becoming more fluent in it like you were when you were an infant. I mean, we were all fluent in energy when we were infants, and then we were taught to switch to more abstract thinking and abstract language. But I want to say one more thing, that the language of energy isn't just words in your head. It's not just right answers in your head. It's touch, it's rhythm, it's sound, it's light, it's an image, it's movement and gesture and taste and scent and sensations and direct knowing. In other words, everything we use as creatures to get around on the planet, including that radar we use to not bump into people, that's part of the language of energy that we use to speak energy, to actually participate. So this process of learning the language is also a process of training your mind to recognize what you already know. Your body tells you every minute of every day what it needs. And pretty much every minute of every day, most of us ignore it, right? We feel tired and we drink coffee, you know. It's like, oh no, I shouldn't feel tired. Instead of investigating, what is this fatigue? What do you need right now? Right? So I think that along with all of this is to learn to ask different questions. Because in our culture, we're taught to ask what's wrong and how do you fix it? Right? What's wrong and how do you fix it? You go to a doctor and they look for what's wrong and then they give you this little white pill to fix it. And I think we need to shift the questions, or we're going to get too much information about what's wrong and never the guidance about what's needed. What can I cultivate in this moment? So those are better questions. What's going on here? What are you saying? What are you trying to communicate in this moment? What do you need? What can I cultivate? What makes my heart sing? What makes my heart sing? Not where do I want to get next week, but what in this moment will make my heart sing and make my energies flow and my body feel like it's thriving? And if we can shift to those questions, it's a whole different ball game. Lots of things heal because the body stops screaming at us with symptoms.
Beautifully said. No, thank you so much, Ellen. I am wondering, I know that I've had my own personal journey, and through the show, speaking with people who channel energies and things like that, where I've had some kind of experiences where sometimes I really felt like, oh, this feels authentic to me, and then other times when it just feels like not.
Yes,
Snake
yes.
oil. And I know there's also skeptics out there who want to see, the evidence, and I think that's reasonable. So, I mean, you talked about not bumping into people. There's actually a term for that in like physical therapy, but I can't. It's not coming to me. But that
Probably
awareness.
proprioception.
Yes, proprioception. Yes. So, are there any like scientific or evidence-based things that you can share for the people who want this benefit of energy medicine but are skeptical about the more spiritual side of it?
Yeah, I kind of want to shift the question a little bit. I'll address it. There are books on the scientific research around energy medicine and all of that. You can just Google those. They're out there, and there's lots of websites that address that as well. And I think that unfortunately, because our culture is not only outside in and objectifies everything, but it's also kind of the new religion is science. And I love science, so don't get me wrong, this isn't anti-science. But I don't think that science is a very good metaphor or framework for understanding our bodies. The body speaks with chemistry, for sure, but it also speaks through energy. It's got two languages. And the chemical language, we haven't really broken the code so that even a chemist who knows everything about chemistry can't control the body or heal the body solely with chemistry. And we know that, that's our culture right now. there's been less investigation, though plenty, around the fact that the body communicates using energy. And, everything from the EKGs that we get to see what the energetic signals of our heart are, or the brain scans that show, the MRIs that show what's happening using magnetic resonance, measuring the magnetics of the body. Those energies exist, they underlie the chemistry. And so they tell the chemistry what to do. So when we're doing energy medicine, it's not about what's your results and which works. It's about, are you going to see yourself as a science project and only do those things that have been validated by studies, knowing that studies are funded by drug companies and that, that's there, it's a limited system, and it's beautiful. I've had several relatives lately who needed surgeries, and oh my God, I was so grateful to Western medicine for what it does well. What it doesn't do well is help us to cultivate wellness. What it doesn't do well is help us to heal ourselves. Now think about it. If you had to go to the dentist every day to brush your teeth, it would be a very pricey thing, because we learn to take care of our own teeth. We brush, and maybe some of us floss, and we do that so that our teeth don't rot. And then when we have rot, we go to the dentist to get that addressed. So if we wait for medicine to always approve everything to do with the body, we miss out on this very direct conversation we can have moment by moment that brings us to momentary wellness. And again, if you put a little momentary wellness in a jar and you add a bead every time you feel momentary wellness, you're going to fill that jar in a week or two if you have a lot of moments. And so not doing that is a failure to thrive that is very cultural. And I'm not dodging the question. There is research about why it's effective, but I'd like to teach a little exercise right now and ask people to tune in and say, does this do anything for me? Because I think that's more effective. And I also want to say that we don't ask that of a Shakespeare play or a Shakespeare sonnet. We don't say, well, is it scientifically validated that Shakespeare can move you? We don't do that with literature. We read the book, we read the poem, and we assess for ourselves, what does this do for me? And sometimes it does nothing, and sometimes it changes our lives. So I'd like people to see themselves as a poem or a story or a novel, not a bag of chemicals that someone else has to manipulate, because we don't have agency. We don't have any power to change our reality if we wait for science to tell us how to be. And that doesn't mean I don't look at nutrition and all that stuff. I love it, but I have to have better guidance, because nobody has done the studies for someone my age, in my stage, with my various attributes, right? So it's always some generic distillation that isn't really always true for me. And almost all of those medications aren't really true for each person. That's why we have the so-called side effects. Okay, so I'm going to teach a little exercise, and I invite people who aren't driving to do this with me. Okay, so you're going to just rub your hands together to just get them activated, because hands speak fluent energy. You're going to put one hand on your high heart, which is just your upper chest, right between your, right beside your heart. And then you're going to put your other hand on your solar plexus, your belly. Okay, then you're going to cross your ankles. Just see what that feels like. And I'm going to invite you to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. And as you do that breathing, maybe breathe in on a slow count of 3. So in, 2, 3, and then out on a slow count of 5. Out, 2, 3, 4, 5. I call that 3-5 breathing. You can do it 4-6 or whatever. The point is to breathe out longer than you breathe in. That releases pent-up energy. It releases what's stuck. So I'm going to just be quiet for a second, do that breathing, and tune into what that feels like. What does it feel like in your body, in your mind, even in your spirit, just to hold these two places, cross your ankles, and breathe. And I notice you're doing it. Do you want to comment at all about what you notice as you're doing it?
Um, I actually notice that I'm like right away, oh, this is something that I teach my clients.
Yeah,
And there is evidence behind it because they teach this to like Marines and people who need to like calm their heart rate, that box
right.
breathing or slowing down. I was also wondering about the crossing your ankles.
Right.
Because usually
What
when
we're
I do it,
doing there is we're kind of speaking energy to energy. So when your hand is on your heart chakra, which is in the center of your heart, you're calming what I call your yin gatekeeper. The gatekeeper is like your immune system. It says this can come in, this has to stay out. This is mine, this is not mine. This is safe, this is not safe. So when you put your hand there, it calms that protector of the inner sanctity of the self. And of course, it touches into the body's electrics because the heart is the most electrical part of the body. And it does all the plus minus signaling that tells the nervous system how to work. So it also helps calm your nervous system. Okay, a lot of bang for your buck to put your hand there. Your other hand on your solar plexus, that is a chakra, and chakras are swirling energies that bring energies in and out of your body, in and out of your field. And this particular one bathes the digestive system. So it sort of calms and supports the digestive system. But it's also associated with how you create your identity and cope with things in the world. So in a way, it's giving you a little bit of a buffer for a moment between you and the world. It's kind of closing off too much input from the world so that you can hear yourself think. But you're also hooking up these two, your heart and your gut, or your heart and your solar plexus. So it's like my heart's truth with my created identity in the world are getting a hookup and having a chance to get on the same page, because often they're at odds. When you cross your ankles, you're creating what Donna Eden calls a crossover, which means that all the energies in the body, in order to be healthy, have to cross over. That's why the left brain controls the right side of the body, the right brain controls the left side of the body. So when we do a crossover like this, we're inviting all the body's energies to go into a figure-8 pattern, which is an extremely healthy distribution pattern of energies through the body. The more crossovers you have, generally the healthier you are. So you're inviting your body to have crossovers. You're bringing integration to left and right brain, but down at the feet where you're more grounded rather than up in your brain, you're actually bringing your attention down to the feet and the ankles. And you just happen, most of us, when we cross, we happen to be crossing on the outside, the outside of one ankle is touching either the inside or outside of the other. And there's lots of meridians that go through there, that especially ones that have to do with returning excess energy to the earth, with controlling your nervous system, with breaking things down so they can be released. On the inner side, if you're touching the inner side, it's the feed of new source energy coming into you. So there's a lot of conversation just in this hold, using the language of energy, which includes touch as a major set of vocabulary. And do we need science? Sure. I actually have done a lot of work with people who were able to test, for example, the pH. These kinds of things can bring your pH back to normal. They can bring your blood pressure back to normal. They can lower a temperature. One exercise I teach in my new book, Your Body Will Show You the Way. In the reviews, somebody said they used it with a friend who had just had a surgery and had a fever because it got infected. And she did this adjustment to what I call one of your burners. And that adjustment brought the fever down within 10 or 15 minutes without drugs.
is that is that the name of the exercise in
It's
your book?
called Adjusting the Flames.
Adjusting the flames.
Adjusting the Flames. Yeah, and I have a version of it in both books. One builds on the other, so they're both good for that. Yeah, so Is it scientific? No, it's poetic, it's literature, but can it change your health? Absolutely. I've had people use these techniques to recover from, to go into remission and recover from stage 4 cancer after Western medicine said there was nothing that could be done and they should go home and die. I've seen people heal, Donnie Eden healed MS using this style of energy medicine, and many other very serious illnesses. So yes, there is science out there to prove it. But the more important thing is, are you connected to yourself or aren't you? If you're not participating in the conversations, the energy conversations that create you, you're at the mercy of whatever they come up with. And you're always in reactivity and trying to catch up with yourself. When you can learn some simple techniques like this, it's not an exercise program. You don't have to do jumping jacks for 5 minutes. You don't have to, these can be done when lying in bed. You can adjust them if you've only got one hand available, or get someone to do them for you. But the techniques in my style of energy medicine, which I call energy dialogue, are really all about showing up, being curious, having conversation and dialogue, learning from your body and mind and spirit as they speak through this instrument, and then being able to have real input into how well you are, how you construct yourself. Because I believe we're too much at the mercy of what society says we are. Many of us hate our bodies because we don't fit the pictures of what they say we should look like. And many of us feel, our bodies don't work right because we don't have the same pace as the norm. But if you understand that each creature, if you go to the zoo and you notice that each creature has a different size and a different pace and a different way of knowing and a different way of being, you don't go to the snakes and go, oh my God, you're so skinny. And you don't go to the bear and going, oh my God, you are such a fatty, you need to lose weight. And you don't go to the sloth and say, oh, you are way too slow. You are not going to get ahead in life. You appreciate each creature on their own terms. And I think that we need to cultivate that in ourselves, because we're not all alike. That's one of the myths of society that says we're all generic, and they can somehow distill the generic humanness and tell us how to be perfect. That's ridiculous. Each of us is so different, and so needs an instrument that can play the music of our individual souls. And when I look at people, because I see energies as well as hear and smell and taste and feel them, when I look at people energetically, the energies that come into them, it's all different. Your soul doesn't look like my soul. The feeds that come into your instrument are different from what feeds mine. So why would I tell you how to make your instrument work like my instrument if it's not going to be playing the same music? And that's what's wrong with all these recipes for here's how you get wellness. It's all about inputs. It's not about how do I process? What's the dynamic here? And how can I shift that dynamic in a moment for different experiences and different outcomes? And how can I show up with kindness and actually have a relationship here rather than being embattled with my physicality, or embattled with my mind, or embattled with my emotions? And I know in the field of self-healing, self-help, there is a kind of addiction to, I've got to be fixed. I'm all wrong, and I need to learn this because I'm broken and I need to be fixed. And I just don't buy that. I mean, maybe I didn't work as well as I needed to work in those years I had the migraines. On the other hand, look at all that I learned that gave me a lot of professional tools to help others. Maybe I had to have those maybe I didn't have to have those migraines. I don't believe anyone has to have a lot of chronic illness. But when we're given the illness, how can we transform it and learn from it and let it help us grow into more full flower of our own nature, rather than focused on, well, I'm broken, what's wrong, how can I fix it? It's those other questions that bring us into our full humanity.
Ellen, thank you so much for sharing that. And I really appreciated the lesson that you gave us about the crossover, because normally when I do those any kind of grounding exercise or breathing exercise, I always try to have my feet flat on the floor. And so I didn't know about the crossing over of the meridians, and I think a lot of people will really benefit from that. We just have a few minutes left in the show, and a big part of your book is about personal and global change and how to thrive, even though we're in such a chaotic world where we're going through these massive changes. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that before we wrap up.
Absolutely. I really believe that it's not just a change of external details, that we're really in a sea change, and we are shifting from this outside in objectified perspective to what I call empowered yin, which is working from the inside out. And it's a time of great awakening. So I really believe that we need to be able to evolve our bodies to handle the shifts that are going on, not just handle the reactivity to the shifts, but to operate differently, because when you're working from the inside out, maybe you need to navigate a little differently than when you're reacting to what society tells you. And energy medicine can help you do that. It can really get you out of that binary either or thinking that is the old way of doing things, us versus them, and get into a new consciousness of both and, of encompassing multiple realities at once. But our nervous systems aren't designed to do that. So we do need to evolve the instrument to handle the global awareness that's rising, hopefully in all of us. I think it is rising in all of us. Some of us are fighting it harder than others. And I think the earth herself is asking us to wake up. I think that's what the pandemic was about. It was a time of saying, we are interrelated. We are part of nature. We're like bees and dolphins, in that we have a collective consciousness. We have access to our fellow beings. And I need to make my decisions not only based on what's good for me, but what's good for other people as well, and what's good for the planet, while also taking care of this instrument. And it's a maybe a bigger charge than that sort of old survival of the fittest paradigm. So with this new stuff, as people are listening, I'm pretty sure you're all waking up because you're listening to this kind of program. But the question I put to you is, do you have tools for evolving your body, evolving your nervous system, evolving your energies to support the new consciousness you're trying to bring in? And that's what I'm offering, particularly in my new book, Your Body Will Show You the Way. I really give you lots of ways to play with it, explore. It's not all about the right answer. It's about the right questions. And then what do you do with those? Where can that take you? And of course, a whole lot of tools like the one I taught in our session today that's still doesn't have a name. It's pretty new. I've got some people on my Facebook group, which is called Energy Medicine with Ellen Meredith, sort of suggesting names for it. So we'll have a name for that in a while. But anyway.
Cool. Maybe something like Cross Your Heart, or I don't know, something.
Yeah, there's lots of good names. People have come up with some great ones. I just haven't decided yet.
And if you would like to connect with Ellen, your website is ellenmeredith.com, correct?
Yes, Meredith,
Beautiful.
ellenmeredith.com.
And I will connect to your YouTube somewhere around here. And hopefully we can talk. I feel like this global change and coming up to speed with all of the changes so that we can all thrive together as a holistic, like as a planet, not just humanity, but all of
Right.
us together. I feel like we could talk for another hour about that at least. So hopefully you'll be able to come back on the show, Ellen. Thank you so much for your time. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you. The name of the book is Your Body Will Show You the Way. Thank you also so much for watching and listening. I want to send you so much love. Be well. Namaste.